For 50 years, Evelyn Parker lived in quiet devotion beside her husband, Samuel. They never had a wedding. At first, he said they couldn't afford it. Later, he claimed a wedding didn't matter after so many years together. Evelyn accepted that, just as she accepted every compromise throughout their life in a small town outside Asheville, North Carolina. They raised a son together, Caleb, bought a modest home with a garden she tended daily, and welcomed their grandson into the world. Evelyn, now 70, thought she had built a life of unshakable loyalty. Samuel had always been distant, but she assumed that was just his way. She spent decades cooking his meals, folding his shirts, showing up for every family event, even when no one thanked her. There were no grand gestures, but she never asked for any. Her love was shown through quiet endurance. But on their golden anniversary, everything shattered. She stood by the roadside in disbelief, watching her husband, dressed in a tailored navy suit, marry another woman, a woman he claimed to have only been friends with for years. And there, clapping and smiling among the guests, was Caleb, her own son. The evening after the wedding, Evelyn sat alone in the dim living room of the house she had lived in for over 4 decades. No lights were on, no dinner was set, a silent protest, her own quiet declaration of war. When Caleb entered with his wife Lily and their toddler son, Nathan, he flipped on the switch and froze. "Mom, what are you doing here in the dark?" The absurdity of his question nearly made her laugh. This was her home. She had built it, cleaned every corner, memorized every creak in the floorboards. And now, her own son acted as if she didn't belong. Samuel walked in moments later, still wearing the same suit from his wedding. Only now it had a faint red lipstick mark on the collar. Evelyn didn't say a word at first, but when no one else offered an explanation, her voice, sharp and icy, broke the silence. "Where were you today?" Samuel feigned confusion. Caleb offered a half-hearted lie. "Just errands, nothing special." Evelyn scoffed. Her errands? Were those errands held in the town square, with music, flowers, and cake? She raised her phone and pressed play. The video rolled. Samuel kissing another woman at the altar, the crowd applauding, and in the front row, Caleb, clapping proudly. The room went silent. "You were spying on me." Samuel's face contorted with fury. He lunged forward, snatched the phone, and deleted the video. "No remorse, no shame, just anger that I found out," Evelyn said flatly. Samuel's defense was pitiful. "That woman, Clara, has cancer. She doesn't have much time. Her final wish was to have a wedding. I couldn't say no." Evelyn's voice trembled now, not from fear, but from the weight of 50 years finally tipping over. "You never gave me a wedding, Samuel. You never gave me anything more than scraps of your attention." Caleb, growing impatient, stepped forward. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Clara's dying, and you're acting like a jealous teenager. Can't you be mature for once?" Mature. The word stung like a slap. She had sacrificed her youth for this family, risked her life giving birth to Caleb, stayed up endless nights while Samuel chased his career. And now, she was told to be mature for quietly asking why her husband married another woman. Evelyn stood slowly. Her spine straightened, her breath deepened. She looked at each of them, her son, her husband, her daughter-in-law, and realized she had become a stranger in her own life. From her handbag, she pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table. "Divorce papers. I'm done. I won't spend the rest of my life being invisible. Whatever's left here, you can keep. I'll be gone by morning." Samuel was stunned into silence. Caleb muttered under his breath. "Who's going to cook? Who's going to clean? What about Nathan?" Evelyn didn't flinch. "Find someone else. I'm not your maid. I'm your mother. And it's time you learned the difference." Weeks had passed since Evelyn walked out the door with nothing but a suitcase, and a spine finally straightened by years of silent endurance. She'd started over in a modest apartment she still owned in her name. A place untouched by Samuel, untouched by pain. Her days were quiet, filled with slow walks, coffee on the balcony, and peaceful solitude. Until one rainy afternoon, she stepped into the cozy little cafe downstairs, hoping for a warm lat and quiet corner. But there, sitting by the window in a flawless dress, full makeup, and a smug smile, was Clara. Evelyn froze for a moment. Clara looked up, as if expecting her. "You must be Evelyn," Clara said, her voice smooth as silk. "You look stronger in person. Not as bitter as Samuel described." Evelyn said nothing. She sat down across from her without invitation. Her silence, sharper than words. Clara took a long sip of tea, then leaned forward. "I know what you must think of me. But Samuel and I, we were soulmates. It was always me. You just happened to be there when he couldn't have me." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. 50 years, she whispered. "That's what I gave him." "What did you give?" "Some stolen afternoons. A wedding dress soaked in pity." Clara's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "When I was diagnosed, I was terrified. I thought I was dying. Samuel was the first person I called, and he came running. That has to count for something." "Turns out," Evelyn replied coldly, "you were misdiagnosed. So now you're what? Healthy and entitled." Clara's expression turned defensive. "I just wanted one beautiful moment before it was too late." "Is that really so wrong?" Evelyn stood, pushing her chair back slowly. Her voice was low but firm. "What's wrong is parading a wedding through the streets like it was a fairy tale, when the man was still married. What's wrong is thinking I wouldn't fight back, after half a century of sacrifice. And what's truly pathetic is needing a tragedy to finally get a man who never had the guts to choose you." Clara gasped. Other cafe patrons began turning their heads. Whispers began to ripple through the room. Just then, the front door burst open, and in walked Samuel, frantic and breathless. His eyes darted from Evelyn to Clara. He saw Clara's lip tremble, saw Evelyn's steel gaze, and instinctively rushed to Clara's side. "She bothering you?" he asked. "No," Evelyn answered for her. "I was just leaving. You two deserve each other. Both cowards hiding behind lies." She turned to walk away, but Clara couldn't help herself. "You know, Samuel still follows your Instagram. He likes every photo. Maybe he misses you more than you think." Evelyn paused at the door. "Then he can miss me from a distance. I'm not interested in nostalgia. I'm interested in living." And with that, she walked out, not looking back once. That night, back in her apartment, Evelyn sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the photos on her phone. Sunlit temples from Greece, cobblestone streets in Italy, cafe mornings in Paris. She hadn't opened the app in days, not since her son Caleb posted a family photo online. A photo with Samuel, Clara, Lily, and little Nathan. Caleb's caption still echoed in her mind. "As long as we're together, that's all that matters." She wasn't in it. Not even a mention. A woman who had given birth to him, nearly died doing so. A mother who held his hand through night terrors, packed lunches, sewed Halloween costumes, taught him to read, now erased, as if she had never existed. At first, the ache returned, raw, bitter. But then, something shifted. Her eyes drifted back to the travel pictures, to her smiling face reflected in the warm Mediterranean sun. "They erased me. But I found myself." That realization hit harder than any insult Caleb could throw. For the first time, Evelyn saw her life not as a story of loss, but of survival and reinvention. She didn't need her husband, didn't need her son's approval. She had herself. And that was more than enough. She reached for a dusty box in the closet, pulling out old journals she hadn't touched in years. Inside were entries filled with dreams: visit the Eiffel Tower, dance in a ballroom, learn how to cook something just for fun. Not to feed others, but to feed joy. "I wanted these things before Samuel. Before motherhood. Before sacrifice became my identity." The following morning, Evelyn made a choice. Not a dramatic one. Not a rebellious one, but a quiet, powerful one. She would start living for herself. Not out of spite, but because she finally could. She blocked Caleb's number, not out of hate but to reclaim her peace. She deleted every photo of Samuel, not in anger but to make space. She made plans to meet the women she had befriended on her recent trip. Strong, silver-haired sisters who understood that it's never too late to begin again. One of them, Darlene, called her that afternoon. "You sound lighter," she said. "Feel lighter," Evelyn replied, her voice warm. "I've spent 50 years waiting for someone to choose me. Turns out, All I ever had to do was choose myself. That weekend, the women met again. Wine glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and plans were made. Retirement communities, group trips, book clubs, ballroom classes. As Evelyn sipped her drink under a patio of string lights, she realized something profound. She hadn't lost everything. She had finally let go of everything holding her back. And in the process, she had reclaimed the one thing she had long forgotten: she deserved freedom. It began with a commercial. One ordinary afternoon, Evelyn sat curled on her sofa, sipping chamomile tea, as the afternoon sun painted golden stripes across her living room floor. On the TV, a travel agency ad played, sweeping drone shots of the Amalfi Coast, gondolas gliding through Venetian canals, laughter and wine under the Tuscan sun. She leaned forward, her heart skipping. For a moment she was 20 again, wide-eyed and full of dreams. That young girl had once wanted to see the world, but then life happened. Marriage, motherhood, obligation. Now, there was nothing stopping her. Without hesitation, Evelyn pulled out her phone and clicked, "Book now," on a 2-week European group cruise. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but excitement. A month later, she stood on the deck of a gleaming white ship, salty breeze brushing her silver hair. The ship pulled away from the port in Barcelona, and for the first time in years, Evelyn didn't feel like she was leaving something behind. She felt like she was sailing toward herself. The cruise wasn't luxury in the traditional sense. It was better. It was freedom. Evelyn roamed through Rome's ancient ruins, touched the marble pillars of the Parthenon, and laughed over candlelit dinners with women who had also spent their lives giving too much and receiving too little. There was Darlene, a retired nurse who once sold her wedding ring to fund her grandson's tuition, and had never been thanked. There was Margaret, who left a loveless marriage at 65 and learned to salsa dance in Madrid. There was even Clarice, a widow who once admitted she hadn't worn lipstick in decades until this trip. Together, they became more than friends. They became family. Each day, Evelyn documented her journey, not for others but for herself. Her phone filled with pictures of her smiling beside the Colosseum, raising a glass in Santorini, twirling in a dress she bought, just because it made her feel beautiful. One evening, in a little Parisian cafe far from the tourist crowd, a tall, distinguished man offered to buy her a coffee. Fernando. He had lost his wife 10 years earlier, a retired literature professor. He now traveled to find new stories, and maybe a new chapter. They talked for hours. About books, about heartbreak, about second chances. Evelyn didn't feel pressure to impress him, didn't feel the need to justify herself. With Fernando, she was just Evelyn. And that was enough. As the cruise drew to an end, she stood at the railing watching the moon ripple across the water. She had set sail thinking it was a vacation. But it had become something else. A rebirth. The world hadn't ended with betrayal and loss. In fact, it was just beginning. Evelyn had stepped into a life she never imagined she could still have. One full of possibility, of beauty, and of her own choosing. By the time Evelyn returned from her European adventure, she was no longer the same woman who had walked out of Samuel Parker's house, with a suitcase and tear-stained cheeks. She stood straighter now, laughed easier, and radiated a quiet confidence that only comes from finally choosing yourself. Her apartment, once a place of retreat, now felt like a sanctuary. She filled it with framed photos from her trip. Not of family, not of memories tied to pain, but of her. Evelyn smiling with a glass of wine in Florence. Evelyn dancing under Spanish stars. Evelyn feeding seagulls on the rail of the cruise ship. Every image was proof I survived. I'm living. Her days followed no one's schedule but her own. Mornings began with yoga in the park. Afternoons filled with painting classes and writing workshops. On Thursdays, she and her golden girls, as they jokingly called themselves, met at a jazz lounge for music, martinis, and sometimes, just sometimes, a little flirting with the charming regulars. Then came the message from Sophia, Caleb's wife. "Mom, when are you coming back? The house is falling apart." At first, Evelyn didn't even respond. But when more messages poured in, each more desperate than the last, curiosity finally won. She learned that Clara had moved in immediately after the divorce. At first, Caleb treated her like royalty, convinced she was more elegant than Evelyn ever had been. But domestic life wasn't Clara's style. Within weeks, the house spiraled into chaos. Meals were burnt or forgotten, the baby fell ill under her careless watch, and arguments broke out daily. Caleb had called Evelyn selfish for leaving, but now, he was begging for her return. When he finally tracked her down at a local ballroom, where she was mid-spin with Fernando, the soft-spoken gentleman who had gently been courting her since Paris, Evelyn didn't even flinch. "Mom, what are you doing?" Caleb barked. "You're out dancing while everything at home is falling apart." Evelyn tilted her head with a bemused smile. "It's not my home anymore, Caleb, and I'm exactly where I belong." Fernando stepped forward, placing a protective hand on her back. "Is everything all right?" Caleb's jaw clenched. "Who is this?" Evelyn gave Fernando a soft glance, then looked her son in the eye. "Someone who sees me, someone who never asked me to sacrifice my joy for his convenience." Caleb, flustered, stammered, "But, Dad needs you. Nathan misses you. I miss you." Evelyn exhaled slowly. "You miss the version of me who did everything for everyone else. That version no longer exists." Her friends gathered around her like a loyal army. Darlene, bold as ever, chimed in, "She's thriving now. You had your chance, kid. You blew it." As the music resumed, Evelyn turned back to the dance floor, her laughter rising over the melody. With every step she took, she wasn't just moving, she was transforming. For the first time in her life, Evelyn Parker wasn't anyone's mother, wife, or servant. She was simply herself. Months passed. The seasons changed, but Evelyn's spirit only bloomed brighter with time. She was no longer a woman haunted by betrayal or weighed down by regrets. Now, she woke each morning with purpose, gratitude, and something she never thought she'd feel again: joy. Her calendar was filled not with chores or obligations, but with dreams. Ballroom dance nights, art gallery visits, spontaneous weekend getaways, and dinners with Fernando, whose presence had grown quietly consistent. He never asked her to be anything but herself. With him, there were no expectations, only ease, like slipping into a warm bath after a lifetime in cold water. One evening, as they stood on the rooftop of her building watching the city lights flicker like 1,000 stars, Fernando turned to her. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice low and sincere. Evelyn didn't even hesitate. "More than I ever thought possible." Because she was. And not just because she had found someone new, but because she had found herself. And claimed herself. The girl who had once buried her dreams under someone else's needs had finally reemerged, not younger, but wiser, freer. She wasn't Nadvi. She knew people still talked. Whispers about the old woman who had abandoned her family, left her husband, and rejected her son. Let them whisper. Because while they clung to old narratives, Evelyn was writing new chapters. In vibrant ink. She started sharing her story online. Not to get revenge, but to help others. She posted about healing, starting over, loving yourself after 60. Her words resonated. Messages flooded in from women across the country. "You gave me courage. I filed for divorce today. Because of you. Thank you for reminding me I matter." One even wrote, "I'm 72 and just bought a one-way ticket to Paris." Evelyn cried when she read that. She realized she hadn't just changed her life. She had sparked change in others too. Meanwhile, Samuel faded into the background. Clara had left after a massive fight with Caleb, and the home once filled with judgment and pressure had turned cold and empty. Caleb called Evelyn occasionally, leaving voicemails that teetered between apology and resentment. She listened to a few, then deleted the rest. She didn't hate him. But she no longer needed his validation. She no longer needed anyone's. One Saturday, Evelyn hosted a brunch on her balcony. The Golden Girls all came, dressed in colorful dresses and oversized sunglasses. They laughed over mimosas, swapped travel stories, and planned their next escape. Maybe South America this time. As the sun poured down on them, Evelyn raised her glass. "To all the women who waited too long to be free," she said. And finally realized. It's never too late to begin again. They toasted, their laughter echoing into the sky. Because Evelyn's life didn't end at 70. It began. Life doesn't come with a rewind button. But it does come with the chance to begin again. No matter how late. Evelyn's story reminds us that time is never lost when it's finally spent on you. For years, she gave and gave until there was nothing left for herself. But the moment she chose self-worth over sacrifice, her life began to bloom. Forgiveness isn't always the noble thing. Sometimes, the most powerful act is walking away without apology. Being a mother, a wife, a caregiver, these are roles we hold, but they should never erase who we are at the core. You are allowed to reclaim your life. You are allowed to rewrite the ending. And you are allowed to find love, peace, and joy, even if it starts at 70. Because the truth is, it's never too late to choose yourself. If you're feeling stuck, forgotten, or afraid to begin again, take a page from Evelyn's book. Start small. Block the number that brings you pain. Take the dance class. Book that solo trip. Write down 3 things you want. Not for your partner, your kids, or your boss, but for you. Surround yourself with people who celebrate your growth, not just your service. And most importantly, remember, your worth isn't tied to how much you sacrifice. Whether you reach 35 or 85, there's still time to build a life that feels like your own. Evelyn didn't wait for permission. She gave herself the green light. And so can you. If Evelyn's story inspired you, leave it in the comments, and share what you're doing today to choose yourself. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us it's never too late to begin again.